And I think that's going to be a common theme is us having differing opinions on the books we read.
Which is probably a good thing overall and good for the podcast. I think she's a great writer. I thought from a character perspective, from a dialogue perspective, even the plot, it was all very well done. You could tell that she was someone who took this book very seriously, and it was immaculately detailed and plotted out. And yet I was never particularly drawn to it or excited about it. I think we'll talk more about it, but for a book about, which we wanted to talk about, greed being the sin that we were going to talk about here. And in my head, I came into it imagining it would be analogous to Amos's Money, which is one of the famous novels of like similar kind of thematically. You can imagine a Bukowski like rendering of the most depraved characters who are obsessed with getting rich, and they have their worlds torn apart by everything from sex and drugs, and everything that could go wrong does go wrong, and yet there's this insatiable lust. And this book comparatively, right, was very mundane, and I would say very middle class all across the board. These are not your grifters who are trying to achieve, maybe they want to achieve, right, billion-dollar status, but that's never really even in question in the book. It's like, what happens when middle class people living nice middle class lives get a little bit interested in earning a lot of money quickly? And in that sense, it's very restrained, right? I guess that would be the word that would come to my mind, a very restrained novel.
You weren't drawn in by the talk of mullioned windows and thatched roofs and Queen Anne homes.
I could imagine if I was a real estate expert or passionate about that, then those sections would have been much more enticing. But you're right. I mean, that's part of the detail of this book, right? It goes into such intricate detail about how, these characters could get carried away by a real estate bubble. And it goes into every part of that. There's never a broad picture stance of too many people were pouring too much money into bad assets. Instead, it's as granular as you can be. And I think that was, again, to her credit for doing that much research and understanding the ins and outs of this small town American people getting kind of over their heads in terms of what they were doing, and yet at the same time being proficient enough in real estate to be able to live with all of their decisions to some extent. So it all made sense, but no, I would say, like, I was never really entertained by this novel to the degree that I wanted to be.
I will say, I think you're being okay. So we're different readers, but this is real estate is something I don't have much interest in, and she was able to captivate me. So I think there is some magic to it. It's not like Power and Glory, like Graham Greene book we just read last time. It definitely is not this deeply literary symbolic book, but there's something about it, and that's something maybe we'll touch on this more later. I think is the character. I think she is a master with character. These were real human beings. They were not caricatures. They were real. Like I knew who these people were in my own life. And I thought that's really hard to come by. And I guess goes to what we've been talking about. It was a very mundane is one way. You could say realistic. You could say down to earth, very grounded, very, very grounded novel. And I think that's something that is not necessarily it's not the sexiest thing, having a very grounded novel, but we'll talk about them more. How about go into your cast, roll straight into it. What actors we got playing here? Who are we going to piss off today?
Well, despite this not being one of my favorite books that I read, this might be one of my favorite castings that I've done. I would love to watch this movie. So for our lead character, our everyman, the epitome of the average Joe, and there's no it was very intentional, I think, that his name was Joe Stratford. I cast Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad and a bunch of other awesome films and comedian. I think he really strikes that role and would do a great job. Who is your Joe?
That's really good. I went with Matt Damon. And I was trying to rack my brain a little more on someone. I didn't have a great visual image of what Joe looked like, except that he was big. He's repeatedly called handsome and he's like
Cute.
cute. I think he's cute.
Yeah. He's a cute guy.
Yeah, he is. Maybe that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
He just, yeah, like you said, every man. Matt Damon to me, like amazing actor. I'm thinking a little, obviously a little bit younger. I know he can play really dramatic, intense roles, but I think he is special in that he can also play that kind of like everyman. You know, you're not really going to look at Leonardo DiCaprio and be like, oh, he's just going to play the average guy. And I think Matt Damon could do a really good job in this role. Who else do you have?
Let's see. For Marcus being the charismatic new guy in town who kind of gets our characters, Joe especially, dreaming about becoming a billionaire and achieving things that weren't possible before. And Marcus does that through a lot of charm and charisma. I cast Bradley Cooper.
Okay. I like your casting way better than mine. I took your tactic where so he's repeatedly referred to as like an Irish dude. So I was looking up some Irish actors and I went with Cillian Murphy. And he's not like the person you would think of as super charming, and at least in my head. But I think, at least in my perspective from having seen Breaking Bad, I was thinking of this character who's able to convince people of everything. And that's essentially what Marcus Burns does. He's like such a sharp tongue that he can convince you of anything. And I think that's Cillian Murphy has a really good grasp of language.
I like it. I cast Gordon. I did Robert De Niro as my Gordon. He would have to be a little bit younger, but he's definitely the oldest in the book. And you can tell he's that deal making, somewhat gangster like persona, and yet never willfully breaking the law, right? Just a bit more negligent than you would think about details.
That's gold because I cast Joe Pesci.
Yep. Yeah, you get that side of them, right? They're not their typical gangsters that we think of them, but they have the same mentality, which is, you know, get the big deals done and don't sweat the details. It's that brashness that I think goes well with the Scorsese era gangster actors.